Welcome back to Guff Stuff Weekly Podcast. I'm Javen.
I'm Guff.
Today we're going to talk about
idea
mechanics and weird things in D&D.
Oh yeah.
So, and we're going to try to do our best to explain certain things in D&D. So, a little anecdote for you.
Okay.
I just said it to you, but we figured we better record it. So,
right.
Short little while ago, a buddy of mine, we'll call him Gamer Joe.
Gamer Joe again.
That
guy's infamous.
The default Gamer Joe.
Gamer Joe is infamous.
And I were chatting about different editions of Dungeons and Dragons and different game systems that we played. And I explained to him that I basically started with 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And then immediately jumped to 2nd and 1st edition because my DM at the time was like, hey, this is where it's at.
Right.
And so I had to learn this beautiful thing called THAC0.
Yep.
And you know what THAC0 is. I know what THAC0 is. Gamer Joe is like, what's a THAC0? Who's THAC0?
What's a THAC0?
Who is THAC0? Why is THAC0 is the important question.
What does THAC0 mean?
So THAC0 literally stands for 2-hit armor class 0.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's THAC0.
Yep.
So that's what it stands for. It's to hit armor class 0.
Yep.
So let's take a little walk down THAC0 Lane and explain how it works for all of you who might not know.
Alright.
THAC0 Lane sits right next to saving throw charge.
Oh, yeah.
Saving throw place.
Yep, saving throw place, yep.
Yeah. So we're going to go down and talk about some of these obscure D&D rules. So, THAC0. In D&D, in every edition of D&D, in every iteration of D&D, a dude with, or chick, or whatever,
A character,
player character, or NPC, with no armor on, and no dexterity modifier, without any modifiers whatsoever, will have a 10 armor class.
Right.
This has been true from the very beginning of D&D until even through 1 D&D. I'm sure it'll be the same.
Right.
The 5.5. The only difference between THAC0 and the 3.0 and forward system, which is what we use now, it's the Die 20 modern system, is that if you put on a chainmail shirt in modern D&D,
right,
it'll be a 15 AC. Your AC goes up. The number gets bigger.
right,
With THAC0, the number gets lower for armor class.
Right.
So if I put on a chainmail shirt, my AC is 5.
right.
So the way that THAC0 works, and it is confusing, it doesn't make a lot of sense why they did it the way they did it, but it's just how you play the game in that.
Actually, I do have a little tidbit on why they did that. I'll tell you why.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, so I had come across an article on the creators of D&D.
Yep.
And why they created some of the things they did. 90% of the charts and all the decisions they made were basically based off of the idea that they wanted tabletop wargamers to transfer over to tabletop role players.
Well, that's what D&D was. It was
right.
Gygax and Arneson, I believe, had made a system called Chainmail.
Right. But that was the reason.
That was a war game, right?
Lots of the war games that even there was all kinds of war games, but they actually had a guy that was one of the first wargamer creators taking part. He should actually have his name in the list too of people that helped create D&D.
Okay.
Because he literally was there the whole time.
Yeah.
He just never pushed to have his name involved.
Yeah.
He didn't go on. But yeah, it was so wargamers. So if you and I were wargamers in the 60s.
Yep.
And this guy Gary comes up to us and says, "Hey, you want to play a game of D&D or chainmail?" Yeah, sure. You could look at it and understand what it meant.
So, and this makes a lot of sense because even in like Warhammer Fantasy Battles, the old systems and stuff, you had a lot of systems where like maybe you need to roll under something, or maybe you need to roll over something.
Right, and so that's why they did it like that. It was literally that was the logic behind it because I was like, some of these things, and then why did first edition D&D have? in basic D&D, everything was on charts. You rolled on charts.
There was no THAC0. It was a hit matrix.
Right, and everything was on stupid charts.
Yeah, it was
That's
on charts.
because
it was for wargamers.
It's easily transferred for wargamers.
Look at Warhammer Fantasy. You had a chart for strength versus toughness versus weapon skill, all that stuff.
So that would be the logic there.
So,
in my opinion,
back to THAC0.
Yeah.
So the way THAC0 works is it's an inverted system, which means the lower your armor class, the harder you are to hit. It means you have better armor. So a guy in half plate with a shield would have 0 AC.
Yep.
So if you are a level 1 fighter or a level 1 character,
right,
and you have a 20 THAC0 with no bonuses to hit, you would need a 20 to hit AC 0. 20 THAC0 means you need a roll on a die 20, a natural 20 to hit someone with an armor class of 0.
Right.
That's simple.
Yeah.
So we can extrapolate that, if you will, and if you have a 15 THAC0, now to hit that guy with the AC 0 and full plate with the shield, what do you need to hit him if you have a 15 THAC0? He's AC 0.
Right.
You need a 15.
Right, a 15, yep.
Which now means that on a 10, you would hit an AC 5. It's just a matter of taking your THAC0, subtracting your die roll,
right,
and that's the AC that you hit. So if you have a 20 THAC0 and you roll a 16, you can hit all the way up to AC 4.
Right.
It's that simple. And we had it... what we did for players who weren't super great at math, we just did charts for them. So you just write out a chart, and then they could follow. It was like having your own to hit chart.
Right.
And it just made life simpler. And now any bonuses you have to hit get applied to your THAC0 or your dice roll.
Right.
Usually it's applied to the dice roll.
Right.
So yeah, that's how THAC0 works. It's that simple. There's nothing crazy about it. It is strange to modern gamers. I will say that.
Well, because everything, even video games and stuff, don't use that backwards mentality. I don't even want to say backwards, but that's the idea behind it.
Yeah, normally in almost all D&D is you count big number, go better.
Right.
Always. But in the case of THAC0 and in a lot of older games, like you said, like war games and stuff, that was... I don't know why they had it high and low. I think a lot of it had to do with... This is just speculation on my part. But I think a lot of it had to do with superstition. And the reason I say superstition is because if you've ever played with wargamers, if you get on a hot streak in a war game, the accusations of cheating and loaded dice and all that come out. So if you make a system where you have to roll high and low, you can't just use the same dice and win every time.
Right. Well, there you go.
So there. I think it has a lot to do with that.
Yeah,
personally.
that would make sense.
Because the stigma of loaded dice and luck streaks goes all the way back to ancient Rome.
Right.
You know, they found a pair of loaded dice in Roman ruins. They were literally loaded dice. Like they rolled the same every time.
You ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
So people have done it forever.
Right.
So, let's talk about another D&D thing that's a little confusing.
Okay.
Can you explain to me how...
Uh-oh, he's tested me. Let's do it.
How does like spells work for a wizard? I mean, it's been pretty true throughout all the editions for wizards.
How do they work? Like just you.
Like how do you get spells as a wizard?
Oh well, jeez. Well, you have to learn them. I mean, you got to go to somebody that can teach you how to use them.
So
that's you're supposed to do.
Okay.
And then when you cast a spell, you use certain enchantments that supposedly take the magic out of the... What's the word I'm looking for?
The weave?
The weave.
Yeah.
There's a name for it. I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But and then you mix it with, some kind of component, and then you cast the spell.
Yeah, the component's the linchpin. The spells are always sitting just outside of perception, but you just do the thing. To
Allegedly, that's how that works. Yeah.
So in my brain, I've always had it that when you prepare, because you have to prepare spells as a wizard.
Right. Yeah, you got to memorize them. Yep.
Which was also synonymous with preparing.
Yep. Yeah, preparing essentially. Yep.
That's when you actually cast the spell.
Right.
Right. That time you take to prepare it every morning, or at night, or whatever. And then when you do the semantic, verbal, material components.
Yep.
That's what pulls it out of where you stored it.
Right.
And then it happens. So, but one of the interesting things and confusing things for players is the difference between, like, how clerics get spells, how wizards get spells, how sorcerers get spells, how warlocks get spells.
Right.
And in a
Warlocks.
nutshell...
What's a warlock? I only play 2nd edition. I don't know what a warlock is.
I kind of want it to be
I get
system
it. Okay,
agnostic, if you will.
Fair enough.
Some of this stuff. But in general speaking, for those who are playing D&D and making a character and finding it confusing...
Right.
I'm sure there's a million other videos out there, but this is kind of a rapid fire thing.
Well, this is also a podcast, so we're kind of just talking. Too.
Yeah. Clerics have the ability to get spells through their deities.
Yep.
Any of the priest class or cleric class. I think they're just called clerics. Or no, there's no priest class anymore. It's
I think
you have druid, cleric,
all
that stuff. Okay. Sorry, my brain, I gotta remember this stuff.
The decisions,
Yeah, it's changed a little bit.
It's changed multiple times over multiple editions. So.
But it has kind of stayed pretty much the same. Your deity will kind of determine what spells you get.
Right.
And clerics can change spells every morning. They just pray for their spells or do whatever they do to get their spells. Same thing for, I believe, druids. Sorcerers, I think, can do that as well.
Do what?
Change their spells.
Yep. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't remember.
I think when you level up or something.
I think sorcerers do it when they level up. I think druids and priests can do it as long rests.
So the way that it works is, like, if you want to be able to cast whatever spells you want at any time, like every morning,
right?
Your best bet would be to be something like a cleric, a druid, or I think it's cleric and druid, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think it is too.
And then if you want the ability to, like, flex and maybe change your spells out every so often, that's when you want to be like a bard, a sorcerer, or a warlock. I believe they can change out some of their spells as well. And if you just want to be able to have all the spells at some point, but have, like, very rigid, you cannot change your spells, but you can learn new ones, that's when you want to be playing, like, a wizard. Right. And I believe Arcane Trickster falls under that too. I think they're arcane. The thief subclass.
Yeah,
I think they're treated like wizards. I could be wrong on that. I'm probably wrong on that. But in older editions, it was basically always the case of kind of the same deal. There weren't sorcerers or anything like that in older editions. It was wild magic, is what it was called. And there weren't warlocks either. Right. You might get, like, innate spells if you were, like, a drow or something like that. But it's basically always been the case in older editions, especially, like, 2nd edition, did a thing called spell spheres.
Right. Yep.
Where if you were a cleric and you were a cleric of a war deity,
right,
there would be a little table that tells you kind of like what spells are, like, okay.
Yeah. Well, you had different levels. You had, like, your circles. Well, I don't know about war because I don't know anything about that particular. But I did have a life druid, and so you had, I think you had necromantic because that was where the heal spells came. No, divine, but whatever. You couldn't have the opposite. But you could have up to a certain level in the gray zone areas.
That's another fun one that always bugged me in the newer editions. Healing is now evocation.
Right. No.
Which is very strange to me. Because healing has always been historically a necromantic spell.
Right, yep.
You know, it has to do with the bio spells, magic jar, anything that had to do with altering life essence or altering biology. Like, other than, like, a polymorph.
Right.
Like, there's a better argument for cure wounds to be transmutation than there is for it to be evocation, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is just old man yelling at phone kind of deal.
Well, I think that part of the reason I think they switched it was because of the word necromancy seems evil. I mean, that it's just inherently I mean, you're trying to bring the dead back to life.
There is that thing, right? I mean, but that usually only falls under create undead.
Yeah,
or
right. I understand that. You understand that. But an average person in the United States or in the world,
also,
you'd say that. And they're like,
whatever happened to negative energy and positive energy? That was a huge thing. Not so much in first and second edition,
right?
But in third edition and fourth, I think third. I'm not going to say fourth, but in third edition, I know it was a huge deal.
Right.
If you cast Cure Wounds on an undead, it damaged them.
Right.
And if you cast Cause Wounds on an undead...
I don't think it does that anymore.
I have no idea. I haven't looked into 5th Ed.
It does that.
But it used to be... Yeah, like...
Well, yeah, you could... I think actually back in
and you had reversible spells, too.
Yeah, I think back in the day there was no cause wounds, was there?
It was the reverse of Cure Wounds.
Yeah, it was just the reverse of Cure Wounds, yeah. And because you could literally just change it up as you wanted.
There was a ton of spells like that, too. I believe Daylight, the spell Daylight... Mm-hmm. had a reverse.
Yeah, that could be.
And darkness, if you used to cast light on darkness, it would dispel the darkness.
Right.
Stuff like that. So there's a lot of weird old quirks in the older systems. And I think some of it still does maintain true. One of the things that stayed consistent through 5th edition that I thought was really interesting was the power level of Lightning Bolt and Fireball.
Right.
Where... you look at, like, Acid Arrow, and it's, like, 3/10, and it's a second-level spell or whatever. And you go to Fireball and Lightning Bolt, and it's 8/6, which has been a holdover from the previous editions.
Yeah, that's just been what it is.
I also do... I think it's interesting that they decided to, quote-unquote, nerf magic as well. Because Fireball used to give you an extra dice every time you leveled up.
Yep. Yeah, so if you were 15th level and you were casting Fireball, you were throwing huge balls of just doom.
Yeah.
Now it's still just, if you're 15th level and 5th ed, you're still just throwing a Fireball.
I believe it capped before, unless if you were using, like, D-Ball. Delayed Blast Fireball.
I don't know. I don't remember if it capped or not. It's been a while since
I know Delayed Blast added 1 to all the dice rolls or something like that.
Delayed Blast was nasty. I think... I don't remember if you had negatives to your saves or something. I don't remember. I know it was nasty, though.
No, I don't... I just remember adding blank damage on the end of it.
That could be, yeah.
But they also removed some of the more powerful magics, as well as, like, the top end of Wish.
Power word kill?
Yeah.
Like, in 5th ed, I believe you have to be... Oh, man. I don't remember. You have to be under 80 hit points before it hurts you. Something like that.
Well, that was true in 2nd edition as well, and 1st. It's always been that way.
Okay.
Well, but it was based on your max HP.
Right.
If I remember right.
Disintegrate, though, that has changed a lot.
Disintegrate has changed a lot.
Because, like,
that used to be
Disintegrate, you were just dead, you were gone. Like, you failed to save, that was it.
I think that's true, but you're allowed, like, 2 saves
I think it does huge damage now, if I recall correctly.
But if you're killed with it, then it disintegrates you.
Right, but but you did, I mean, there was no hit point. You just failed against disintegrate.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Let's talk about bleeding out and dying in 2nd edition and 1st edition.
Well,
so by the book, initially it was you hit 0 hit points, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
I believe 2nd edition added the -10 rule.
Right.
It was an optional rule in the second printing of the 2nd edition.
That way you
handbook.
could.
And it was basically like you bleed out 1 point around, and someone has to make a medicine check to stabilize you.
Yep. I don't know if there was medicine checks, were there?
Yeah, there was.
Okay, sorry.
Because you had herbalism and you had first aid.
First aid, it was called, yeah.
First aid, yeah. And because you had non-weapon proficiencies, which are also just weird back then.
Yep.
It's funny because I've talked to a lot of people that played 2nd edition and 1st edition. And a lot of them don't really get how skill checks worked.
Right.
Because it was kind of confusing. You kind of just rolled, and whatever your DM said, you're kind of like, okay.
Right, in 2nd ed?
Yeah, so, pop quiz.
Right.
Do you want to roll high or low on skill checks?
I'm trying to think here. I think you want to roll low? No, high. Yeah. Wait, I don't remember.
So you want to roll low.
Yeah, low. Yeah.
So if you're using first aid,
right,
and it's a wisdom skill check, you want to roll below your wisdom to succeed on the check.
Right.
And some of them have modifiers.
Yeah.
So like if it had a -2 modifier, you subtracted 2 off your wisdom score.
That's right. Yep. Yep.
And so it basically was like harder. But if you had multiple of the same, you could.
Yeah, which again is the backwards mindset compared to today. You always
it was
have DC checks.
Some you need to roll high, some you need to roll. Saving throws is another great example of something you need to roll high for.
Right.
Because your saving throw goes down as you level up,
yep.
which inherently means you want to roll high to get above it.
Yep, and then you didn't have like there was no DC checks at all. I mean, technically they were. But they
you either succeeded the check or you did.
Right. There was and then saving throws you had, they grouped in a lot of things like poison, paralyzation, and all that was grouped into one.
PPD, paralyze,
and
poison,
death.
Yep.
And then you had your spells, your breath weapon.
Rod, staff, wand.
Yep.
Was its own.
They were all different, and it was depending on what class you played, depending on how good you were at certain ones.
Yeah, fighters could shrug off breath weapons like nothing.
Yeah. But the rest of it would be like...
A cleric was like, oh no! But a wizard saving against spells versus a barbarian saving against spells.
Right.
Barbarian's gonna get screwed every time.
Right. Yeah, it was an interesting way of doing it.
And then your spell saves actually changed based on your stats, too, if you got high enough stats. So, like, the whole idea of reflex, fortitude, or the... honestly, 5th does a good job with, like, just the stat-based saves.
Yeah.
That's a good system.
That's not terrible, yeah.
But, we've talked about it before, where 5th is kind of the bridging of all the other systems together and forming a conglomerate of all of them. And they did a good job with it. The only problem with 5th is once you get past 6th level, the challenge begins to become a lot less.
Right. Yeah, there was nothing after a certain level that just made you want to drive harder because there was nothing to really, without the DM getting super creative, which, let's be honest, in a system that's made to anybody can do it system, which is what they designed it for, DMs didn't have to challenge themselves. You could take an average person, average gamer, and he could DM a module.
Yep.
And if the module didn't say nothing...
And don't get me wrong, like, the way that they did 5th edition made it very simple to just follow something along.
Right.
Like with the modules. And some of the best modules I've ever played have been on a 5th edition.
Right.
So, like, it's not knocking 5th.
Right.
But it's not... What's a good example of trying to explain? It's when you've played something that is complicated, complex, meaty...
Right.
And you kind of understand the rules of it and you can play it. And then you take away a lot of those rules and simplify it.
Right.
It just makes it a little bit less. It's like playing a game with all the DLCs and then going back and trying to play the vanilla game again.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that's a whole nother podcast. Yeah. I mean, it's the reason why I don't install mods.
But that's what it feels like, right?
Right.
Like, because when you go back to play something, you're like, oh, well, I miss this intricate system that was in place, or this weird quirk / rule that made this interaction interesting.
Yeah, okay, I just figured it out. We were trying to figure out why 5th edition fails after a certain point. Mm-hmm. I think, to me, the biggest reason it fails, and I've had this in multiple campaigns that I've been in now, and DMing multiple campaigns, is once you get past 6th, say, I'll even go as far as 10th level, or whatever the one is where you get a skill gain. I think it's 11, 10, 11.
It's 4, 8, and 12, I think.
12, okay, so 12, I'll use 12th level.
Yeah.
Every character is fairly... Well, even after 6th, every character gets to be fairly generic at that point. There's not a huge difference between a bard and a wizard or a sorcerer, other than some of the basic...
The weird nuances.
Right,
underneath.
but other than that, you go back to a 2nd edition, the wizard... There's no sorcerer, first off.
Wild magic is all you had.
But yeah, you have wild magic. But I mean, the wizard was a wizard, the cleric was a cleric, the druid was not the same as a cleric. They didn't even share the same spell lists. They had different spell lists for each of them.
This is in 1st edition, yeah.
Yeah, well, 1st, 2nd, back in the older days.
Because 2nd, they kind of blended cleric and druid.
Right, but I mean,
But I get
your
what you're
rogue was a rogue. There was no fighter could rogue a rogue. That just didn't work.
Yeah, you weren't having a dex-based fighter that could outsneak a rogue.
No, there was no way.
A ranger was the only one that was even close.
Yeah,
to
he didn't even get all the rogue. Yeah, he only got a few of the rogue skills.
Yeah.
And with 5th ed, you could take feats that basically give you rogue skills. You could take feats that give you fight. Like a rogue take polearm master and shield.
It's interesting because you lose some of the dynamic of like a diverse party.
Right.
It's funny. They've lost diversity in the party by making everybody able to do everything.
Right.
So you lose diversity by doing that. It's really interesting.
I guess if I was going to pick something that I didn't like about 5th ed, that would be the one. Is after a while, your character either becomes obsolete because you like fighters don't power level with the rest of the classes, in my opinion. I mean, even rogues at some point slow down.
That's always been kind of true, though. Like, if you're a full caster, you're going to outscale everybody. That's always been true.
Right, but if you go to 2nd or 1st, you take a 15th level fighter, he had enough hit points that he can run at a wizard.
Run at a fireball and all that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, you fireball me, whoopee, I got 300 hit points, okay. Or you take a barbarian.
But, I mean, to be fair, with the action surge, and I actually think I'm on the other side of this one. I really do. I don't think I think fighters are more capable now than they were in the previous editions.
I think they have more utility, but I'm not sure capable.
I think more capable in a mono in a 1v1. But in the older editions, as a fighter, you had all the followers.
Well, yeah, if you played with the followers, yeah.
Which if you don't play with the followers in the older editions, you're actually handicapping a lot of your martial classes.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Because the game was designed around having the followers.
That's true.
So if you take out of, and it was balanced and designed around that. So when you remove that, it's like taking 9th level spells away from wizards. You're taking a core part of the game that was designed around them, just away.
Right. Well, the fighters did have specialization, which no other class did.
True.
So instead of shooting like 1 arrow around, I could shoot 3 when I got high enough level.
Yeah.
Instead of throwing 3 daggers, I could throw 10,
yeah,
whatever it was at some point. It just got ridiculous.
But it's still, I still think that uniqueness of every class has been a little bit lost.
Oh no, absolutely.
And it's funny because like
that's what I was saying. Is I think the uniqueness has been lost. I think
the uniqueness now is basically the small little how you're doing something, because there's so many like free disengages, free bonus actions to do something. There's so many ways to get that now, but they just worded a little differently. It's like flying in Magic the Gathering, and then when they introduce Shadow or Fear, or it's all the same, Landwalk, it's all the same thing, but just a different coat, wearing a different hat. It's all evasion of some kinds. That's what I'm trying to equate this to.
No, I agree 100%.
My fundamental issue with Beyond 6th level lies in the core inherent properties of 5th edition, in that every character is a hero. The game does care if you live or die. That's why they give you 3 chances to live or die. You know.
Yeah, you don't go negatives. You just go to 0, and then you have 3 chances to survive or die. That's literally what you do.
And it's funny too to me, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have to roll a 10 or higher on a die 20 to succeed a death saving throw. You are 55% likely to roll a 10 or higher. Because 10 all the way to 20 is 11 total. If you count the 0 of 10. So like the game favors the players not dying. And in a system where you inherently favor the players not dying, players are able to invest in their players more. Like there's benefits to this. As a narrative, long-term campaign, it makes more sense. It's more fun for some people. But you can only power game and kill God with the power of friendship so many times before you're like, oh, well, what happened if like one of us actually died along the way? Or, you know, what happened, like, where's the pressure? Where's the outside pressure? You know, in all sorts of games, we look for something called pressure, and it's what forces you and motivates you to do something. When you have an inherently hero-based system, The only pressure is eventually like some existential threat.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that that's how every D&D campaign has to end now.
Yeah, that's with the
threat.
with the 5th ed system in mind. That's pretty much how it goes.
Yep, it's always an existential threat. I mean,
I know
it sums up perfectly in the last thing they're releasing for 5th edition.
Yeah.
Vecna.
Yeah.
Again, some existential threat, some threat that's bigger than the universe. You band together to kill God with the power of friendship.
Yeah, it's just, and I mean, I like 5th. I've played 5th. I've played it. I've done a lot of hours.
I have too. Yeah.
There's nothing. I mean, it's a viable system. I just feel like I've played enough of it now that it doesn't interest me much anymore. And I want to go back to that point when I was gaming, that if I'll use you for an example, if I got to an 8th level barbarian, everybody else around me was probably 12th to 15th level. It didn't matter if I died, because I just spent 2 years of my life trying to work this character up, million XPs per level to get a level. You know, and it sucks to lose.
But the thing too is, like, back then we had outs.
Yeah.
Like, and we still have outs now. I shouldn't say back then, like, oh my god, we're never gonna have an out again. But there's always outs if your character dies.
Right.
There's always a way back.
Right.
I don't care what anybody says. There's always a way back.
No, yeah, absolutely.
You might have to monkey's
wishes,
pod
whatever.
or do a genie or whatever.
Right.
But like the amount of ways you can get someone back in this edition feel lesser, because there's resurrection and true resurrection, I think.
Which edition are we talking right now?
5th.
Okay. Yep.
And I think that's about it. Because Wish can't do it. Because Wish just lets you cast a spell of a lower level.
They did counteract that by making sure everybody had lots of money, so you could go pay somebody to do it now. Back in the day, unless you were a really high-level group and your DM was really loving you, you worked for every freaking gold piece you had, because you didn't have, I want to sleep tonight. I didn't, you couldn't just go to sleep and wake up the next morning without your hit points back.
That's true. Like, so the early
if I had
level
100
grinds,
hit point fighter and I lost 80 of them, the priest wasn't going to blow all of his spells on me that day.
You're buying potions.
I am buying potions, and I'm going to blow a lot of money on that stuff.
Yep.
And if nothing else, I'm just going to put a camp up in the middle of the woods and hope to God nothing kills me.
Pathfinder did that. Pathfinder 2, when we played that. That game was brutal. They're like, buy health potions. Almost all of our money went back into health potions.
You need to go get health potions.
Just so we didn't die.
It was just that there was a few more money sinks.
But, like, again, not knocking 5th in any way. Like, 5th...
It's a different play style.
It's a different game.
Yeah, no, it's different.
But it does a good job of, like, hey, I'm kind of sad to see it go. I'm also interested to see how 1 D&D will be.
Right.
I was curmudgeon-y and slow to embrace 5th. But...
I embraced it because I was just starting the store and I wanted to have something for us to play. And
yeah.
It was easy to learn.
Yeah.
And everybody that come in learned it real quick.
And I don't know what they're going to do, what the difference is going to be in 1 D&D versus 5.5.
They swear that it's going to be all backwards and all compatible. But, you know.
So to me...
I'm sure first and second...
To me, it just sounds like a balance patch.
Yeah.
I mean, first and second are mostly compatible.
I mean, but if you have a pure, like, you take one of the Gamer
It requires
Joes,
work, you know.
You play with Gamer Joes, the family of Gamer Joes that you played with.
Okay.
And they're playing basic and first, right in that area. And then you take, say, my group when I played second and like 2.5, because we did take some of the 3rd edition feats and turn them into non-weapon proficiencies.
Yep.
There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like, between that basic group and the 2nd edition.
Yep.
There's a huge play style difference.
There's a big difference even between adding Unearthed Arcana to 1.0.
That's true, yeah.
Like, or adding kits to 2.0.
That's true, yeah.
I don't normally play with kits.
Yeah.
I almost never play with kits in 2.0.
Shame on you.
I just...
For me, the kits were just an easy way to make it okay for 2 fighters to be in the group at the same time, or 2 rogues, because if you just take a kit, then your jobs are completely different. Now, you can create that character for the jobs to be different, but when you start out monetarily getting a bonus or even an extra skill to help you towards that particular, to be the pickpocket compared to being the
and see, like,
burglar.
The feats they feel the same thing as a subclass to me in 5th Ed, which I don't really care for the subclasses.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's like, they are what they are. Like, it's fun to try them out and stuff, but, like, you always end up then with, like, one subclass that's good and 3 that are garbage. More or less.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the game, too.
Or, like, you end up with a very specific thing. Great example is the Breach Gnome.
Right.
They're very good at doing one thing.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, after
but
that,
otherwise, they're just
you get them in the field, they're in trouble, but you put them in a hallway. Well,
yeah.
Good luck getting past that dude.
They're in a very specific scenario of trying to get past them in a hallway. They're basically unstoppable.
Yeah, you might as well just burn the building down.
But in every other scenario, they're just a normal dude.
Yeah.
So I guess it does add, like, a little flavor, but, like, there's some that are just very strange.
Right.
And
oh, yeah, no, you gotta kind of restrict and, limit. Like, you gotta have... I've always done this no matter what campaigns we do, and even to the latest one that I did. You literally tell people ahead of time these are expectations. Like, you fall outside that expectation, you're gonna have a really boring
I suppose,
time.
I mean, that's pretty true. Like, even in 5th Ed, how many campaigns have I been in where it's like, okay, no blade singers. Like, people just no blade singers.
Right, it's just because it's not... it's like we were doing the Pathfinder campaign. Y'all are gonna be cops.
Yeah.
Like, picking a fucking wild mage barbarian from the fucking desert planet.
Chaotic neutral.
Like, that makes no sense. It's not gonna work. Don't do it.
Yeah. I was surprised you let me play a non-good alignment in that.
Yeah, I mean,
neutral,
it was
man.
a neutral, though.
What
I
is
mean,
a cop lawful neutral? Like,
it's pretty actually not a bad alignment. Like,
I like lawful neutral for the guards.
But, yeah, so those are some of the big differences, I think, that we've...
There's just some quirks and some things to talk about. I am going to look a little into 1D&D because I want to talk about it, and I'm going to look more into it because I think they have the playtesting materials and stuff.
Oh, yeah, I'm just updating.
I'll probably be reading through it and scouring it pretty good.
It'll be interesting.
And the last thing I want to leave everybody with was something called a 5-foot step in the older editions. You remember what the 5-foot step is?
No, not necessarily.
So you can take 5 feet of your movement to step out of combat.
Oh, no, I didn't. I don't remember that.
So I
don't think I ever used it, though. So
I think it was one of those weird alternate rules.
Right.
Where, like, you could maybe use it if you... Just like dragon spellcasting in 5th Ed is an alternate rule.
Right.
Also, the books are just chock full of that stuff.
Oh,
alternate rules.
Yeah.
But...
Well, they made whole books. Combat options. There's a whole book called
Combat Tactics and Options, yeah.
Like, it's literally just a change of the rules.
Yep, and it had a bunch of different ways to do, like, different crits and all that.
Which we played with a lot of that, actually.
I've used almost everything out of it at some point.
Because we got away from the weapon speed and
or,
stuff.
Remember when it split strength into 2 different skills?
Yeah.
Or it split wisdom into 2 different skills? Right. It split every skill into 2 separate skills.
Right. Yeah.
It was interesting stuff.
Yeah, it was, that's for sure.
Because it split charisma into comeliness and personality. Yep. So it was how good you look and then how likable you were. Right. That was charisma.
Yeah, you could be a beautiful person.
Just horrible personality.
Attitude, yeah.
But yeah, these are some of the quirks of D&D. And I guess the message to leave you with is don't be afraid to try some of the older editions. They may be quirky, they may be weird.
Yeah.
But you might have fun with it.
Yeah,
it might just be something strange.
To end on that one, too, I actually had a customer in the store not that long ago. He started playing D&D in 4th edition. He does not like the new editions because 4th edition was...
very different.
Very different than the 3rd. And he said he tried 3 because somebody swore, well, 3 was way better than 4. And then, of course, other people are like, 5 is way better than 4 because they're just so different. And he's like, I love 4. Like, that's what I learned on. That's just so simple to me.
Yeah. Well, it's because everything's a power.
Yeah.
It's an MMO.
Yeah. And so...
but I will say, I'm gonna take a stab, one little stab before we go. I have found that a lot of the AD&D players did end up migrating to 5th at some point.
Yep.
But I have found that a lot of the 3.5 players and the 3.0 players simply refuse to get off of 3.5 and 3.0.
Yeah, in fact, we know some.
Or they go to, like, Pathfinder, which is glorified 3.5, 3.0.
Right, just, some mods.
So it's real. I've always thought that to be really interesting, where the people in the 3.0 to 3.5 are so dead set, but the people in, like, the 1st and 2nd are, like, cantankerous, but eventually...
Well, right. Because in 1st and 2nd, everything you did, there was that loss factor that you just wasted your whole campaign.
And I think...
And then in 5th edition, you had that. There were some big similarities. Like it felt familiar, but you didn't like. You could relax a little.
Like the way the spells were.
You could literally relax a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was just like
fifth
for
edition.
3.5, the power creep was so huge by the time you were in the high levels. I mean, it's kind of the same problem Pathfinder 2 has, or even 1.
Which,
is that by the time you get to high levels, you're fighting 3-4 hour long combats.
Yeah, because it's plus 40
everybody
to hit.
is so powerful.
Yep.
You didn't really hit that in second
the bloat.
edition or fifth.
Yeah, second edition, you'd be lucky. Like, first edition, the only time it would take a long time is in the first round of combat if the two wizards were doing psionic combat.
Yeah, right.
And that would take a while,
right.
but once it's over, the combat's over like that.
Yeah.
You know,
that's... Okay, so I know we said we were almost done, but that's another big difference between second or the first editions. Anything but 3. When I say first editions, I'll say anything but 3.
We're talking Advanced Dungeons.
Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And 5th is the power creep for the monsters. In first edition, the first editions, a dragon was something to be totally afraid of.
Oh yeah,
like,
even a wormling.
You're like, no. You turn around left. 5th edition, like, 5th level fighter, let's go fight him. Why? Well, because I can go do this.
It's really funny because I
can't just breathe fire on me every round.
I ran a challenge campaign. Like this was meant to be like a campaign for experienced players.
Right.
That is extremely difficult. And I throw the first dragon at them, the first dragon encounter at them at 5th level.
Right.
And most of the time, they would end up with like one guy alive, or they would all die.
Right.
Like I never had an instance where all of the players walked away unscathed.
Right.
Like it was always just a freaking struggle. And I'd throw a white dragon at them, would be the first one they'd fight.
Oof. Yep.
And a white dragon's actually like one of the easier dragons to fight.
Yep.
And I went right along the chain of how supposedly difficult the dragons were. And I don't think anybody ever made it past Blue Dragon.
Yeah, well, there you go, a lightning bolt from range, and what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but that dragon slaying campaign, that challenge campaign, really was a testament to it. And in first edition, it's even harder.
Oh God, yeah.
Because rather than a random amount of dice,
it's brutal.
Dragons, when they breathe on you, deal their hit point maximum as damage.
Yeah, it's
tough.
Nasty.
It's very tough.
And there's really no forgiveness. It's just there, and then every round they can do it. They don't have to wait.
The forgiveness is, do you make your breath safe?
Yeah.
Also, I know second ed had some recharge stuff. It was like a percentage every turn for it to come back, with a gaining it every turn.
I don't remember exactly,
but it was a cumulative percentage.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, you had like a 20% chance the first round to do it again.
I don't remember on that one.
But you can also fly around and just in a circle and breathe on people.
Where 5th ed you get, I think it's a recharge, but it's a like 1 every 4 rounds or 5 rounds you can breathe. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, I think it's a 1. You roll a die 6.
I'm not even talking about that. You can go to undead. You can go to all the other ones. Yeah. Life sucking undead.
Remember level draining?
Yeah, I mean that stuff's just brutal.
You do not fight vampires.
No,
because vampires suck.
Yeah, Strahd second was first, whatever.
Oh yeah, just lose levels. Just
you see, we're 5th level now. You're first. Have a nice day. Come back at me, bro, when you're a little tougher.
Yep.
Anyways,
we've gone on long enough. This is Guff Stuff Weekly.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right, later.